So I'd like to welcome all of you today to our Principals First signature dinner here in wonderful West Orange, New Jersey. By introduction, my name is Michael Beck. I've been involved with Principals First since 2020. I also serve as the New Jersey State Co-Chair with my friend Angela Smith, and also sit on the national committee focused on overseeing multiple state chapters across the country. A little bit about Principals First, and then we'll get into the agenda. We were formed in 2019 as a reaction to what was going on in our country at the time and continues to be. And looking at our politicians and our politics and our leadership, and looking at what makes America great, no pun intended, in terms of principles, the rule of law of our Constitution, and seeing a great deviation from our founding and what we believe it makes and takes to be Americans. And so our founder, who actually is here tonight, will be speaking in a few minutes, Heath Mayo, started this group as that reaction. And it started in very small little pockets and started to grow and grow until we have a national summit in Washington, D.C., which attracts over 1,000 people on an annual basis. And I recognize a lot of great faces tonight who joined us for that summit back in Maryland in February. So we're very excited about tonight. As we start every Principals First event, I'll ask one of my New Jersey State leaders, and if you turn your attention to the mantle over the fireplace, if you could please rise if you are able to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now, without further ado, the founder of Principals First, Mr. Heath Mayo.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you to every one of our volunteers who made this possible in the state. I know it takes a lot to put an event like this together, to find the venue, to get the signs set up, who's bringing the tablecloths, etc. It's a volunteer effort from start to finish, and so if you had anything to do with planning this event this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized, because you can see most of the room helped put this together. Thank you very much. Well, look, it's fantastic to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heath Mayo. I'm the founder of this organization, and as Mike said, it really did start with just a couple of us in Chili's, in the bar at Chili's, talking about how frustrated we were with the direction of the country, and that frustration and feeling of being politically homeless was a feeling that ended up being widely shared by a lot of folks. And as we, it's really started with the principles. We came together, and those are posted on our website, the Declaration of Principles. Things like the rule of law matter. Things like character and integrity in our leaders are important, and that also matters, that we need to elect people who are truthful and honest about the facts, even when it might hurt their side of a political argument or even the leaders that they support. Things like that we ought to be conserving our resources, that being the money that we as taxpayers pay to the federal government. We ought to be responsible about how we spend it. And also just our natural resources, that conservation extends to our surroundings, our water, our air, and making sure that the generations after us, that we're leaving them the inheritance that we received from those who came before us. Those principles have really animated everything that we do as a group. And obviously the conversations that we have, we're not a Democratic group or a Republican group. We have folks from both sides of the aisle join us. But we are really focused on what we see as a breakdown in the American identity. and many of you probably sense this as you're watching the news every day or just seeing things about our country, and you're wondering, we're losing something about who we are as a country. The things that define what it means to be an American, what it means for America to lead in the world. You know, there's a saying now in Republican circles and even in other circles that, you know, America is more, it's not an idea. Get rid of the ideas. America is not an idea. It's about the material well-being of its citizens. And if you were born here, or if you look a certain way, or you talk a certain way, then those resources are meant for you. And the point of the country is basically just to increase the material well-being, and whatever we do to do that, then that's what it is we're doing here. And the Constitution, the principles of equality and justice, and the aspirations of our founding, those are just soft ideas that don't really matter in today's world. Those are old ideas. That is fundamentally an un-American conception of the country in our view as principles firsters. And the reason the organization exists is to proclaim that concept and those principles and those ideas that define the country, because we think that they do need to be championed in that way. They need to be defended, and they don't need to be defended in Washington, although we certainly should elect people that go there and champion them in the halls of power. But most importantly, it has to be defended by Americans, citizens, in communities around the country, in places like this. That's why we focus a lot on doing in-person gatherings, not just sort of tweeting about it into the ether, but really showing up and meeting people face to face. Because we think, and we've seen, that when you gather in person around these ideas, when you meet people like Mark Daniel, people like Michael Beck, Brittany, when you form those relationships and you see those people, it convinces other people that, hey, they're like me. They care about the country like I do. And it helps us champion those ideas and spread those ideas in a way that allows them to spread. Because ultimately, at Principles First, we believe that the effort, the way we're going to change this right now is that it's got to come from the bottom up. We've got to change the people we're electing and the Democratic majorities that are currently electing leaders in the Republican Party. That's obviously where a lot of the problem is, but just Democratic majorities generally, so that that those majorities that we are democratically demanding elected officials that care about the founding, that care about these principles, that recognize their importance, and that are going to defend them when they're challenged, and even when they cut against the preferences of our own political, need and demand. So that's a big piece of what we do as an organization. The last thing I want to leave us with before we get the discussion started is we are more than a conversation circuit, and we're not a think tank. We're very different from a lot of groups out there that exist. We do have discussions like this, but the point of these gatherings is to foster community and grow the organization and evangelize these ideas in the spirit of what makes America America. And how we do that is people like you see in the room this evening who raised their hand, volunteering to host small gatherings like this. We have gatherings around the country. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 people who meet up over dinner to talk about the state of the country. Sometimes it's 50 people or so, like you see this evening at a sort of a sit-down discussion. And then obviously other times it's the big national summit that we have in DC, where, what happens there is we bring a lot of folks to the stage who espouse these principles, and we inject ourselves into the media narrative in some ways. So people see us, they hear us, they know that we exist. And that is important in today's day and age in terms of moving how people think about politics, let people understand that there's a home for them where they don't have to just isolate and turn off their TV and tune things out. They can actually engage, roll up their sleeves, and become part of our team. And so that is how we think about the action part of this, because at the end of the day, it's the burden of all of us as citizens to change the trajectory of the country. And we think that events like this, grassroots outreach to our neighbors, is how we're going to get that done ultimately. So thank you for being here. It's a privilege to see all of you, and it gives me hope. Hopefully you feel that also, being in the room this evening, is that there is a reason, I think, still to be hopeful about the United States and about this great country that we share, and that there are better days ahead, but it can sometimes feel very frustrating. And so that is why rooms like this are important. And so without further ado, we will get started with our first discussion, which I am moderating. So I will invite to the stage General Mark Hertling.
Okay. Is it okay if I bring wine here?
It is.
Okay,
That is
good.
absolutely okay.
It's a very important question.
And I'm going to bring up my questions list, because you're a guy that really needs no introduction, but you have much more life experience than me, and so I wanted to make sure that I could cover it all in our discussion tonight. So tonight's theme is chain of command and chain of consequences, which is, as we all know, not an abstract academic concept at this moment. It's very real, it's very tangible, and it affects a lot of things that the country is involved in at the moment, from Iran, from the conflict in Ukraine, and elsewhere, even domestically, the use of military force and the use of the chain of command, deploying America's military might even in domestic situations. Decisions made at the top of the Pentagon, I think, are being felt all the way down, not just in the rank and file of the military, but also we as citizens, I think, are more aware of this concept and how our military works, and maybe concerned about the safeguards and the norms that are in place, and where those norms can help keep the ship steady when things get chaotic. So I think there's no one better positioned to help us understand what this all actually means than the man next to me here, who has spent 38 years inside that chain of command. So, General Hertling, thank you so much for being here with us. I want to start with character, which was one of the principles that I mentioned. You've written a book recently, come out with a book called If I Don't Return. You deployed to Desert Storm in 1990 and began writing a journal for your young sons in case you didn't come home. That journal is now the book I mentioned, If I Don't Return, and there are copies over there that the general will be signing later on. What did you write about? Maybe just give us a general overview of what you put in that journal, and what does that experience tell us about the weight that people in uniform carry on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thanks, Heath. That's good. But first, I want to comment on something you said earlier about this group of people. I mean, we're coming together in a bar. I'm thankful for bringing my wine up here, but that's what our founding fathers did. They came together in small groups like this and talked about the kind of government they wanted. So what Principles First is doing in both the big venues like we did in February, but also this one, I think this one I like more, to be honest with you, because it's more intimate and we can share questions. The other thing, though, there was a young lady and she left because I think her baby was maybe needing some air or something. She was sitting over there, and I didn't get to meet her.
That was my wife and probably my baby. So,
Seriously?
Yeah.
Seriously?
I think they're over there somewhere.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, but that there she is. What is your baby's name?
Adrian.
Adrian is
She's our
here.
youngest Principles First.
Adrian is here because her mom and dad brought her here. Because they're concerned about her and what she's going to face. So the book I wrote, it has kind of I think, an interesting story. I think you will too if you read it. When we were deployed to Desert Storm in 1990, we got the word over the TV set. We were told to turn into Armed Forces Network. I was in Europe at the time, and we saw the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs saying that the entire 7th Corps from Europe, about 150,000 people, were going to deploy to Iraq. And I was in a division, the 1st Armored Division, that was one of the elements of that corps. And I was a member of a cavalry squadron, which meant we were out front doing reconnaissance for a 20,000 strong division. We had about 900 soldiers in our unit. When we went in the next day after the announcement, which surprised us all, we were told by the intelligence officer that we would likely suffer as the cavalry squadron 50% casualties. And because of that, they were going to reinforce us with more people. Well, I was 32 years old at the time. We had 2 young children, 7 and 10 years old. And the mission is something the military prepares for, being asked to put your life on the line. But what you sometimes don't prepare for is that instant wave of mortality that hits you, that you could be a coin flip away from dying and leaving your sons and your wife back home to become fatherless and a widower. So what I started to do is write daily journal entries. And it wasn't just about the war or the deployment. It was about things that I wanted to teach our young sons if I didn't come home. And they were subjects like character, like values, leadership, faith, fear, anxiety, emotions, the gamut, while we were sitting in the desert waiting for the war to start 2 months after we got there. Then the second section of the book is about the war itself and what soldiers go through during war. And then the third section of the book is the post-war operation, which deals with soldiers with moral injury, wanting to go home, and wanting to return to family. So the book is really about leadership and character and values and family, with a smidgen of Army stuff in there to help the general public understand what the military does. And that's a long answer to your question, Heath. I'm sorry about that. But what I'm finding out, or what I found, and so I wrote this journal. I'm sorry, I didn't tell the rest of the story. And I returned home 9 months later. Our children were still 7 and 10. They had no desire to read the musings of their old man. So I threw the journal into a footlocker. And it stayed there for the next 35 years. Until our youngest son asked my wife 3 years ago, hey, and he's, by the way, a veteran of multiple tours, as is our oldest son. Both went through combat as well. But our youngest son said, hey, Mom, where's that journal that Dad wrote? Unbeknownst to me, he was asking. He took the journal, typed it up into a Word document, inserted pictures, and gave it to me on Christmas morning of 2024.
Oh, wow.
So when I started thumbing through that book, or that manuscript, the sights and smells and sounds of the desert came back, and I started getting emotional. My wife says that I cry at supermarket openings, but I cry at other times too. And then our son said something which was a challenge to me. He said, Dad, he said, my brother and I read through this and realized why you were writing it. It was to prepare us in case you didn't come home. And he said, but now, he says, you have 5 grandsons and 35 more years of experience. Why don't you continue the journal entries to what you've learned over the last 35 years? So in doing that, first of all, it was very cathartic, as you can imagine. But secondly, it was extremely emotional. To reflect on life and to reflect on character and emotions and leadership and values and what I had learned in the intervening 35 years. I'll stop there, but it was interesting. I got a call from my publisher this morning. The book is, I'm thankful, and by the way, our son pressured me to get it published after he saw the draft. But the publisher called me this morning. He goes, this is the weirdest war book we've ever published. And I said, why? And he says, you're getting more women to write reviews than you are men. And I think it's because of the emotions in it, but also the aspect of family and what comes together with soldiers who deploy in combat mission, that it's more than Keith, a minute ago, used the phrase, when the military deploys. The military doesn't deploy. Men and women deploy as part of a military force. And when you break it down to that, it isn't this great big blob of people. It's the nation deciding to send our sons and daughters to war. And that's sort of what the book is about. Sorry about the long...
No, that's great.
That's an advertisement, though. The book is on sale for... Yeah.
No, that's a great synopsis of what it is and what you were saying. And in talking about some of what is in the book at the summit back in February, March, I think it was March this year, you said something that really took off on, I think it was social media. Wherever we posted it, it got a lot of traction and reaction. You said trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. And I think it got so much traction because people can readily see that concept and truism playing out in real time in our country. What are the consequences of losing trust in buckets for the military, and how do you see that playing out at the Pentagon right now?
Gosh, yes. And it is true, trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And that is representative of marriage, friendships, organizations, the military, the civilian leadership of the government. If you don't have the trust, if you feel you're being lied to or deceived, it creates second and third order effects that are incalculable. Trust, in my view, and I teach leadership to a bunch of MBA students, trust is the bedrock of leadership. It is the element that you have to formulate and be active about ensuring it occurs in everything you do, from answering a phone call to talking to people to doing what you say you're going to do. So if you lose that trust in your government, not only from, I think, the citizenry, but also from our allies, and we've spent, at least since the end of World War II, 80 years building trust with like-minded nations so that you become transformational, meaning more taking organizations forward for the good of people, versus transactional, which is an immediate win-win or a win-lose in some cases. You're going to lose trust. And when that happens, it cascades into trust not only in individuals, but trust in institutions, trust in governments, trust in alliances, trust in even the policies that we make. Policies are supposed to be driven by a nation's values, what we believe in. And, we have these two great documents of both the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. But we also have 250 years of writings and speakings from people like Roosevelt and the Four Freedoms, Kennedy and the Inauguration Address, Gettysburg Address by Lincoln, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, Maya Angelou and some of her poetry. They say what we believe or what we act upon as citizens of a nation. And it appears to me that many of them are just being wiped away because of that lack of trust. It's difficult to believe anyone right now, especially those in the military, which at one point had a higher approval rating than any other institution in the United States. And even now, I get daily messages, text messages and emails saying, why don't you guys in the military do something about this? Why don't you take over the government? Well, because that's not what we do. We follow legal orders. And even that has become tenuous.
I think a lot of this is, I think we're seeing, unfortunately, the consequences of losing some of this trust and faith and seriousness, quite frankly, in the Pentagon leadership, in our political leadership in Iran. I think we're really seeing it. Curious to hear from you, like, do you think that it is impacting the situation on the ground? Like, would we be in a better spot, setting aside, whether we should have done what we did in the first place? But now that we're here, is it tangibly affecting our ability to mount a coalition, for instance, to clear the strait and open it and respond to Iranian actions in the region? I mean, how do you see that playing out? Are we severely hampered because of some of this? And how can we address it?
Yeah, it's interesting because democratic nations go to war. Democratic nations go to war because they have the consent of the people and the governed. And I got to tell you, I can get this out of the way real quickly because when you're an old retired general, you have to quote Clausewitz at least once. So I will do that now. What Clausewitz says is something about an eternal trinity between the army, the government, and the people. And that trinity has to stay in balance. So if you have an individual, whose name I shall not mention, just saying ad hocly, if that's a word, let's go to war, without getting the consent of the people or the government in a democratic society, you've already created problems. It also causes problems with our allies, because we have democratic allies for the most part. They also have to go to their people to determine whether or not they can support us if we ask for their support. And what we've seen is, first of all, we didn't ask for their support. We didn't even tell them what we were going to do. And then we berate them because they're not going with us after we've insulted them for months. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say anything about Prime Minister Starmer or, name that governing, Chancellor Merz or anybody, but they have a responsibility to their people to get approval for what they do. And by the way, so does our president, but he hasn't received it. When you put that aside for a minute and then say, well, what about the military? Hey, we do what the elected officials tell us to do, unless it's illegal. So if you all elect a guy that's going to violate the rules, that's your problem, not ours. Don't ask us to do something that you didn't want to do. And we can get into loyalties in a minute too, but the only thing, when I spent 4 decades in the military, when I raised my hand and swore the oath to the Constitution, it was to the Constitution. It wasn't to a person. We are one of the few nations on the earth that swears our allegiance to a piece of paper as opposed to a fatherland or a motherland or a king or a queen. We pledge to defend ideas. So when we talk about that, what I'd also ask you to consider is not only do we have a loyalty to that piece of paper, we do follow orders if they're legal ones, and if the lawyers say they are legal, but we also have a loyalty to our troops. Because there's a lot of people that will write to me saying, why don't you just resign? Why don't you just quit? Don't let them do this to you. Well, if I were in that position, I would have to think about the young soldiers that I command who can't quit. And I'm leaving them without leadership, or at least moral leadership. So those are the factors that go into military decision making.
And one of the things that I've noticed, particularly with these Iran press briefings with Chairman Kaine and Pete Hegseth, is you really see the difference between Chairman Kaine's leadership in this moment and Pete Hegseth's. I wonder what you make of this sort of very it's like aggressive, macho. We've terminated them 15 different times, but yet they still have a bunch of missiles somehow that they're shooting at. Why are they doing that? Like, why? I mean, we've always had a lethal military force, and we've not had to shout it and brag about it and beat our chests. Is that? I mean, I think that the administration thinks that we're addressing a recruiting crisis. So, I mean, that's some of the rationale is they think that we're making the military a tougher place, and so maybe people are going to be more willing to join the military. And I think the recruitment numbers are up a little bit, but
no,
they're not. Okay, but I just wonder what they're thinking when they do that. What the effect is. I mean, what do you make of that style of communication?
It's interesting for me watching Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kaine. And in fact, there was an article in the New York Times this morning about Chairman Kaine being really subdued. His job by the Goldwater-Nichols Act of 1984 is to provide advice to the Secretary of Defense and the President. He is not a commander. He has zero command authority. So his main job is to provide best military advice. I think he's given it. But he also falls under the rubric of a professional military officer where he's not going to say, hey, they're not listening to my advice. These guys suck. They're not hearing anything I'm telling them. And boy, are we getting into a lot of trouble. I can read that in his body language. I don't know if you can. But as they go back and forth in some of the press briefings, you got Secretary Hegseth, who is, as he said, the macho guy. And I got to tell you, Secretary Hegseth, yes, he had military experience. He had zero command experience. He was a captain that never commanded a company. And if you look into his background, there was a New Yorker article. I don't want to slam him too much, although I will. There was a New Yorker article written entitled Company Kill. Hegseth was involved in a situation, his unit was involved in a situation where several of his fellow soldiers were accused of war crimes because they murdered some civilians. And the brigade commander was relieved of his duties, a guy named Michael Steele, who I knew. And he was appropriately relieved. I think Hegseth took that as being over the top, that his commander shouldn't have been relieved, that his fellow soldiers shouldn't have been, adjudicated for war crimes. But you look at the evidence, and it was there. So I think this swagger and this insulting of the press, the insulting of lawyers, the insulting of people who aren't lethal like him, is all, I don't know, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I think there's a lot of insecurity here. Versus Chairman Kaine, who understands, Kaine was the liaison officer to the CIA. I don't know how many people know that. Before he left the Army, his last job was the CIA liaison, the military liaison to the CIA. So he knows what's going down. But his job is to give his best advice and influence people. But Heath, what I'd suggest is there are some people in the current administration that are uninfluenceable. I'm making up another word.
Yeah. And certainly hasn't. Those press briefings, however loud they are, have not really translated into public approval.
And you know what else they've done? Is they have degraded trust. One of the things I talk about in my book, if I can, my wife watched Colin Powell and Secretary Cheney give press briefings during Desert Storm. Saw the same thing during Operation Iraqi Freedom 1 and 7 when I redeployed again. And she said to me when we were watching the press briefing the other day, she said, you can't trust these guys. I could trust Cheney. I could trust Powell. I could, as much as you didn't like going to war, or it may have been the wrong decision, you could trust the people telling you the truth about the war. Rumsfeld, I got to tell you, I saw Secretary Rumsfeld up close and personal because it was my 2 years on the Joint Staff, my only time in Washington. He was a son of a bitch, but he told the truth. Sometimes you didn't like to hear it. I don't know what is truth and misinformation anymore. And that goes back to your first question about trust. If you lose trust, you lose everything.
The president and a bunch of CEOs are obviously in Beijing this week, meeting with Xi Jinping and the Chinese government. That, in many ways, seems to be our largest geopolitical question. Is China, what they're going to do, particularly with the AI race and the implications that the advanced versions of AI now have for cyber warfare, but also battlefield tactics and battlefield warfare. I mean, I've read some dystopian, not so distant futures of like drone insects swarming and being fought by drone birds.
Yeah.
and like that's the future that we're looking at. How do you see that dynamic with China, playing out with this current administration? I mean, what do you see the consequences of our foray into Iran and sort of what seems to be a quagmire there, making us weaker vis-a-vis the kind of dance that we're having to do right now with China? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. What I'd say is China has never been named in our strategic documents as a foe. They've always been called competitor with different systems. I actually had a chance when I was a colonel in the War College to be one of 6 people that went on a mill-to-mill visit with China in 1998. And we spent 3 weeks in China, visited several cities, and because I'm a European guy, this was all new to me, and we spent a year studying the culture before we went over there. We went into a briefing at the PLA War College in Nanjing, and we were hearing a briefing from a bunch of students, and they were talking about the program of instruction, and he said, okay, our first semester we do tactical stuff, and we finished the semester with refighting the Battle of Nanjing, where the Japanese came in, slaughtered 250,000 people in a Holocaust kind of situation. And we refight that battle to see how we could get it right today. Then they said, second semester, we do an operational campaign exercise. And this was, by the way, in 1998 when we went over there. And they described what they learned and everything in terms of the operational art. And then they said, and we finished with another exercise. And they didn't name the exercise. So dumb Hertling, the only Army guy in the group, I raised my hand. I said, what exercise do you do? And they all kind of looked at each other back and forth like this. And the professor nodded his head, go ahead and tell them. And one of the Chinese students said, we refight Desert Storm and we play the Iraqis. And we determine ways how to defeat the Americans. And then after that, they gave us a briefing, 1998, on their 20-year plan toward 2018. And like good soldiers, Marines, and Navy and Air Force guys that we went to the hotel bar that night, and we went, oh, that was such BS. They're never going to get there. They've got all kinds of strategic objectives. There's no way they're going to do the things they're going to say. They had hit every single target early from their 1998 20-year plan. So, yeah, they're serious about it. And watching body language today on the news, I think one individual of the 2 that are meeting in Beijing has the upper hand.
I think we're running close to time. Do we have time for maybe one audience question? Or okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Open it up for questions. Oh, okay.
Yep. So you can share that one.
Yeah.
Mark, I'd be interested in I know you spent a lot of time in Germany, German people, culture. Maybe even beer has a special place in your background.
I don't drink.
What do you think of the reduction of 5,000 troops? I know Chancellor Merz came out and made a comment about Trump and the Iran war. agree with him 100%. But what would your take on him, Trump, kind of retaliating and saying, hey, we'll reduce troops in Germany by 5,000, maybe even more?
Yeah, it's personal for me because during my last 3 tours in Germany, I was back and forth between Iraq, but also spent a lot of time in the transformation of the European footprint. And my last job as the commander of U.S. Army Europe, we said goodbye to the last tanks on the continent. So the U.S. Army since 2012 has not had an armored formation, a tank formation in Europe. I don't know if you all know that. And I fought hard in both Congress and in the NSC and with my boss at UCOM about keeping an additional brigade of about 5,000. Curious that number comes up, okay? And it's a tank brigade that they're talking about out of the 1st Cav Division. So the answer to losing that 1st Brigade was to establish what we call the rotational force. And since 2010, we've had a brigade, even though it's more costly, and I pointed this out to members of Congress, it's more costly to rotate a brigade over there every year as opposed to have a permanently stationed brigade there. And they do more things than just sit around and drink beer and eat schnitzel. And I'm serious when I say that the U.S. conducts, or my last year there in 2013, we conducted 457 what we call theater security cooperation exercises, where we would partner with the 49 countries in Europe, either 2 or 3 out of 16 at a time, to do exercises and train up their forces and train with them. And again, it gets to trust, because you can deploy forces, you cannot deploy trust. You have to build that over the years. So we built a formation in Europe of 34,000 soldiers. The smallest percentage of it were the infantry and armor brigades. The largest parts of it were intelligence, cybersecurity, maintenance, aviation support, and healthcare. So when you pull a combat unit out, especially a tank brigade, which is part of the rotational force, which was, by the way, promised to the German government and promised to the NATO command group, you're basically saying, screw you guys. We're not going to have it. And by the way, when we went from 90,000 to 34,000, we turned over bases close to, as I recall, the number was 63. We turned over 63 bases and built brand new hubs. Now I'm sorry for taking so much time, Keith, but the bases, I have to explain, were the same bases we fell in on in World War II when the war stopped. So you pulled into Heidelberg and you took over an SS facility which became the headquarters of U.S. Army Europe. I don't know, these are all old buildings. So we wanted to give our soldiers some quality of life, and we got a lot of money from Congress to do that. So we built 5 hubs, centralized hubs throughout Germany, and 1 in Italy. We're giving up billions of dollars of facilities because we have a president making a knee-jerk reaction because of a comment made by Chancellor Merz. And we are taking away a combat brigade that can be doing exercises with our 49 countries in Europe and our 54 countries in Africa, and they provide support for a lily pad to the Middle East. You could not be doing the operation in Iran right now with the bases in Europe that are being disassembled. It's a lily pad. It's a forward operating base. And it's more for us. I'll pound the table on this one. It is more for us than it is for Germany or any of the Europeans.
Is there another one? I think there was one here. Yeah, right there.
Hi, General. My name is Susan Summer. I came down from Vermont, specifically to hear you. And on the way, I decided to stop so I could take you a tour of West.
You're from Vermont?
I am. Well, I live in Vermont.
What the hell are you doing in New Jersey in the summertime?
That's very good.
I don't know. Okay, all right.
I stopped and did a tour of West Point. I had never even thought to do it. I was very impressed. But there was this underlying sadness. I believe that the Cadets Creed is honor, duty, country. It may be duty, honor, country.
Duty, honor, country. Yeah.
And you explained that because we didn't use the word idiots, but that's what we were because of who we elected in 2024 and the subsequent administration, that our military, the men and women who are trying to keep us safe and do their honor, duty, country, have to do with the person in the White House orders or what the Secretary of Defense says. And I wondered, what should they be teaching now in light of our current situation? I firmly believe there will come a time when we have to rely on men and women of our military to help us restore our constitutional republic, to prevent the current government from overturning our votes when we have our midterm elections, from potentially not even having elections in 2028. So at West Point, how do they address that issue? Because both men and women are citizens, just like all of us are. We all owe an oath to support and defend the Constitution of our country. And how does the military deal with that?
Yeah, from the very first day at West Point, the very first day at basic training for any new recruit that comes in, you're not only taking the oath, but there are classes and scenarios designed to help you determine how to push back against illegal orders, unlawful orders, they call them, not illegal. And truthfully, I've had experiences in my career where I've had to do that. They were nothing like some of the things we're talking about today. But I think we've seen, first of all, the military do just that. The story is yet to be told on Southern Command Commander Halsey, Admiral Halsey, who suddenly retired. I personally think there was more to it that had to do with unlawful orders being given in his area of operation. I don't know that for a fact, so that's conjecture on my part. But you don't resign as a four-star admiral on a whim. He wasn't told to resign, he resigned. And I think it was because of what was happening in his area of operation during the early stages of, the striking of boats. To get back to your point, though, West Point not only talks a lot about duty, honor, and country, which is our motto. They also have something called the Honor Code, which is a cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And they are this is no kidding. This isn't like, I don't want to be disparaging, but this isn't like University of Virginia that says they have an honor code, but they don't pay attention to it. And I don't want to disparage University of Virginia. But if you violate the honor code, you're kicked out for either good or for a period of time. So that plays a part. There are also, mandatory classes on leadership and character development and value creation. When it's interesting, two quick stories. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm taking too much time.
No,
but,
that's okay.
And
So you keep going.
okay, I'm kind of an old general, so I tell a lot of stories. I'm sorry. Thomas Jefferson created the military academy, and he didn't want to. I don't know if you know that. George Washington and Henry Knox and Hamilton all wanted him to create a military academy. And when he was in the cabinet as the Secretary of State, he said, no, I've spent too much time in Europe, and professional militaries get you into trouble. When he went into office as the president, he had a difference of opinion. But he measured it. And the mission of the United States Military Academy is to train and develop leaders of character for the nation. Those were words dictated by Jefferson, because he not only wanted a professional military, he wanted engineers to build roads and bridges and all sorts of things across the country at the early stages of our development. It changed after I graduated, but I have a bachelor's of engineering, and I couldn't draw a bridge to save my life, but that was my training. Secondly, I'll tell you something else. I never did this through my career, but I still wear my class ring. I now wear my class ring. By the way, the military academy was the first university that established class rings in 1835. I don't know if anybody cares about that fun fact. But in 1867, generals from both the North and the South came together in New York City and created, much like Principles First, something called the Association of Graduates. And they said the country was in such turmoil because of the Reconstruction Act and the post-war slavery that they created this thing called the Association of Graduates from generals that fought on both the northern and the southern side of the Civil War. And they thought that was the way to bring the nation back together. That's now, our cadets know that now as our alumni association, but the founding of it was uniquely different. That's what I think Principles First and organizations like them can create, of common sense, logical, factual-based citizens who come together and say, after this is over, or when we're facing our next step, let's bring this back together. And by the way, the other thing I said in the speech in the February conference is, don't think we're going to go back to where we used to be, because we're not. We've got to be a more humble, respectful, and educated nation than we were in the past. That's going to be exceedingly hard. And God give us the good grace to elect a good person that will bring that back for us.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Please give the round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The New Jersey State Chapter of Principles First. I've been involved just at the National Summit for 2 years. Felt there was the impact and made me feel that I had something better to do than doom scroll. And to really, truly get involved in an organization that was going to help spread a positive message about integrity and character, which is really where it all starts. So I wanted to be involved. I got to meet Michael. Michael took everybody who had come to the summit, who was from New Jersey, sent us all an email, and we got about at least 10 or 12 of us who were here from New Jersey, and I'm just so proud of every volunteer. So I just want everybody to give another round of applause for our New Jersey chapter. Okay, so it is my pride and joy to introduce a very close friend. She's going to make eyes. Jackie Lurea and I have known each other for a long time. My husband was a quadriplegic who passed away about 10 years ago, but disability advocacy was how my husband met Jackie, and I was voluntold to get involved as well. They had a consortium of different organizations that help serve people with disabilities. She had moved on to veterans issues, and you name it. This woman is a powerhouse in New Jersey. Somebody said that this was Angela too. No, I'm Jackie too. That's how I look at it. So I'm going to read her bio, which is incredibly impressive, and then I'm going to hand it off to Jackie. We are missing, unfortunately, Esther had to leave. She was here, but she came down and not feeling well. So we have another. She'll be okay, but we have another fireside chat. So. But anyway, let me read Jackie's bio just so you know a little bit more about her. Take my glasses off. Okay, so Jackie is the founder and president of Alexina Consulting, a firm focused on workforce development and stakeholder engagement. As a minority women business enterprise, the firm serves as an important partner to businesses and organizations across all sectors. By creating a professional atmosphere where meaningful dialogue occurs and all voices can be heard, the result should be a more successful and sustainable business entity. Jackie has been involved with the veteran community since 2005 when she was the CEO of the Partnership for Community Health, specifically in education, workforce training, and employment. She continues this work today. Jackie currently sits on the board of directors of the Essex County Workforce Development Board, board of directors of the Global Business Travel Association, gotta take a breath, New Jersey chapter, Biomed Committee of the American Red Cross, the Northern New Jersey chapter, an advisory board member of the New Jersey Association for School Resource Officers, and is the Goodwill Ambassador of the Blue Knights New Jersey Chapter 8 Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. So this woman can do it all. So anyway, I'm going to pass it over to Jackie to introduce our esteemed panelists that we will have a fireside chat with.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Angela, thank you for bringing me into the Principals First fold, because I'm one of those people who tried to be apolitical because I thought it was good for my business, right? To mind my business. And I just realized that I can't afford to do that anymore. So thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Angela, for allowing me the space and allowing me the space to bring a good friend of mine in. I apologize, our speaker had to leave, the other speaker, but Casey and I have enough of the history where we could probably fill in until tomorrow morning with the amount of things we won't. But I just need to share with you this powerhouse next to me. Casey Moes is retired lieutenant colonel. He's a senior client executive program manager at CWT, leading strategic corporate travel program management for several multinational clients. She brings more than 20 years of active duty service in the U.S. Army, serving as a military police and force protection officer in leadership and operational roles across Italy, Korea, Africa, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, where she led soldiers in combat. So we are global tonight, so I am so impressed. She also served at the United States Military Academy at West Point as special assistant to the commandant for respect. Yeah. Mentoring cadets on equal opportunity and sexual harassment prevention. In addition to her professional work, Casey volunteers with Women in Service Coalition Incorporated, also known as WHISKY, but ends with an I, not with a Y, as legislative coordinator advocating alongside fellow women veterans to protect opportunities for service women and support thoughtful policy on gender integration. Casey holds a BS from, as Lieutenant General already said, holds a BS from the United States Military Academy at West Point and an MA in Security Management from Webster University. And she is based out of Andover, New Jersey, right here, where she lives with her spouse, Lori Morano, and their twin boys, Levon and Judah. Yeah, so, but what I didn't find on her CV was good friend of Jackie's, so we'll just clarify that, add that. So, Casey, I would like to ask you, we've talked about many things, but can you share with us one of your best memories of when you were in service?
Well, we have shared many stories. I would say my best memory is probably having the privilege to lead a military police company in Iraq in 2006 and 2007. An absolute honor to be able to take that team to follow our national strategic mission down to that soldier level and lift, I would think, those sons and daughters to do their best during that very long tour during a very critical and dangerous time. Now, I was a military police officer leading a unit with men and women. I was not technically in combat, so, because that didn't happen until 2015, right? That women were allowed in combat. But I was on the same patrols, I was in the same stations, and I was doing the same things as my infantry brothers and sisters. What I will say is great about that time is that we were there to train Iraqi police in police tasks, but we soon found out that wasn't really what they needed. What we did do is we exported hope, leadership, the values of our nation, and a belief in the rule of law. And I will always hold on to that as something meaningful I did with my life, and that I helped the soldiers of my company do as well.
That is beautiful, Casey. Thank you. And we had an opportunity to speak briefly with Lieutenant General before about they become your family. You are all your family, and based on the book, right, that is waiting for us. But yeah, and you reiterated that because they are your family, and you need to take care of each other. Could I just ask you, was there any time where someone, either male or female, however they identified, said to you, "You're a woman. Why would I listen to you?"
So, perfect question. And I was going to add this story onto the end of my intro, but I thought I gave you enough with my exporting of values. But an anecdote that kind of brings that to light is, as a company commander, I was paired with Iraqi generals, or Iraqi police generals, on both sides of the districts I worked in. So one was in Sadr City and one was in Balashik. They're both in Baghdad. So you knew who Muqtada al-Sadr was. He's a pretty bad guy. Sadr City was a pretty bad place. And I was in and out of there about 10 and a half months, doing things with my soldiers, doing leadership checks, taking the Iraqi generals out to checkpoints, and doing what we were supposed to do there, exporting that hope and the belief and hopefully the rule of law. And come down to the winding down of my time there, and we always had a round table in the Sadr City IP station with not just the U.S. Infantry, but also the Iraqi infantry, the Iraqi police, so a whole group of us there. And I always had a seat at the table because I was paired with the Iraqi police. And so by the end, the Iraqi army guy who had really been disregarding everything I said the whole time I was there, he pulls me aside. He's a major. He says, Captain Moes, you're just like a man. I need you to know that. And he really meant it as a great compliment. I was like, oh, am I should be insulted by that? I'm just like a man. He's like, you say what you think at the table, and you do all the things. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we do. This is what we do. And if I changed his mind just a little bit, that made me feel like I wasn't out trying to be the woman in the room. I was just being my soldier's leader. And it changed his mind, and hopefully he looked on his daughters or his neighbor's daughters, somebody else in a different way, and thought of them as more capable. The other Iraqi police general I worked with, when I left, he said, man, I can't believe we only use 50% of our population. Those are his exact words. I mean, and it's true. Why? Why would only use half of your intelligence, half of the capability that's available to you? And those were our private conversations. Those were not anything, to go out into the world, but that's how we change people's minds. Just doing the things, saying what you're supposed to say, and taking one step at a time.
Casey, you just brought up such a great point, and I'm listening to you and how you interfaced with males of other countries, right, and how you won them over. And I dare say that we could transfer that power to women in the workforce today, here in the United States, to prove our point. Can you tell us what skills, what knowledge did you bring back with you when you re-entered civilian life? Because this really is about veterans, right? Who is taking care of the people? Who's fighting for the people that fought for us? So what words of wisdom can you share with people who are coming back or are here and are looking to make some noise like obviously you did?
I would just say that if you're retiring as a military police officer or an infantry person and you don't want to be a police officer, then you got to look at what else you're bringing to the table. And I didn't want to be a police officer, but you do have a lot of exportable skills. I went into the travel business. I did not know anything about the travel business except for they like to travel, right? But I do know how to learn things on my own, and I knew how to write well, and I knew how to speak well. And I think that if you hold on to those things and you get someone to take a bet on you to leverage your transferable skills, then you're going to be just fine. And you have to believe that you're fine. The military, did set up a very wonderful program called the DoD Skill Bridge, which allowed you to get a little taste of the corporate life before you got into it. And that was also instrumental in my transition.
So you mentioned that you have someone who championed you. How important was that for you in your career right now?
Well, I got to say, I mean, it's always, you can have a perfect resume, but unless somebody puts it in front of someone else, you will never get it seen. You won't even be considered, really. So I would say the DoD or the military has tried to create a network where we could help each other out. I had my former G3 that I worked for when I was in U.S. Army Africa, he pulled me into the job at CWT, which is now GBT, Global Business Travel, Amex. And that was, he got my foot in the door. But also, I did meet Jackie like my second week on the job. And I like to call her the great connector because she pulled me across every organization that was just read on that sheet. And she's like, do you want to join this one? Do you want to join this one? Do you want to join this one? And it really is when I didn't retire into New Jersey. I retired, my last duty station was in Rock Island, Illinois. So I had come here and I really had no network. So the network is everything. So even if you're not hiring somebody, if you're introducing someone to someone else, or you're getting them to a meeting, that stuff matters. It matters because it's maybe they just remembered you from one split second, and then they're gonna like, I'll take a call with you. I'll tell you what I know about travel. I'll tell you what I know about the pharmaceutical industry or whatever. It's just getting your foot in the door to create a little space. It's pretty big, and I mean, I can tell some embarrassing stories about Jackie if we want to know. She just really.
What's the next question?
She really did help me get my name out there and get started. So wonderful.
Well, it is my pleasure. And as Angela mentioned, workforce development and community engagement has been my life. And I did say to a couple of people, Keith, that once you're in my network, that's where you remain. And it's true because today, if you're looking for a job or you know someone who's looking for a job, it is not what you know, it is who you know, right? And just talk about it, right?
There's a great thing I learned on my way transitioning. It was your net worth is your network. I mean, they are equal. So your network is everything.
Absolutely. So yeah, based on all of the promotion, and I have to really commend Principals First on your ability to promote stuff. It's just amazing. We were supposed to have Sue Fulton here. And Sue Fulton is the executive director of Women in Service Coalition Incorporated. And you are a volunteer in the advocacy aspect, governmental advocacy. So can you tell us, why did that get started? And what is it all about?
Why did it get started is also a very loaded question. So Whiskey, whose job is to advocate for great policy for men and women in our service right now, it started because we saw some changes with the administration, which looked like women maybe taking a huge step backwards. And when you're in the military, you cannot say anything. You have to be apolitical. You have to be supporting your policies of your government no matter what, because you swore that oath to the Constitution, right? So you're promoting that as much as possible. So I know plenty of people that are still serving. I still have good friends that are in very important leadership roles now. And I wanted to speak for them. I wanted to speak especially for the time I served. I graduated in 99 and I finished my career in 22. During that time, women did so many things. Like I said, I felt like I served in combat. I led my soldiers in combat, but that wasn't recognized that way at the time. And then in 2015, it did. And then we had women graduating from Ranger School, and we just had women doing everything they wanted to do if they were qualified. I mean, not every woman, but the women that could do it were able to do it if they wanted to. And I mean, I was just cheerleading on the side, loving it. And so when I saw things changing, drastically, it really worried me. And I called up the most powerful female veteran I know, and her name's Sue Fulton. She's a graduate of the West Point, class of 1980. And I said, Sue, we got to get these people together. And between she, myself, and a 2016 graduate, we started rounding up women, and not just West Point women, not just officers, and not just Army. We took Marines, enlisted, CB3s, Navy folks, and Air Force. We have all of the services represented, and we really have worked very hard to, I guess, put the facts out on the table and provide those to certain people in political positions that need that information if they're going to advocate to keep us women, all of our, back to the main mission, to keep opportunities open for women, to make sure our unit cohesion is as strong as it ever has been, and that we're the most ready force can possibly be with the best leaders, that we can protect the accomplishments that women and minorities have accomplished, because there's been some erasure of that. Protect our healthcare opportunities, and lastly, prevent and punish sexual harassment, sexual assault.
What do you think is the hottest topic right now that whiskey is concentrating on? Because there are unfortunately so many issues, right, facing women, minorities currently. What would you say is the biggest issue?
Well, I'm not sure I can say a biggest, because they kind of go in waves. There was a real push, and it was very close for the current administration to shut down Ranger School for women, but that was quickly combated. There was the Army PT test was undergone drastically to try to change it and disenfranchise women from passing. That didn't work. Now they're doing another review of women in combat roles. But the truth is, we already did a review. There was a review from 2019 to 2023, and the data proved that women were meeting the standards. Not every woman is going to meet those standards, but women were meeting the standards for the jobs they're qualified, and they're allowed to go. There's now 180 women have graduated from Ranger School. There's 750 women serving in infantry, almost 11 to 1,200 in armor, nearly 3,000 serving in the field artillery, and there's even single digits, but across the special forces, every single force, there's women serving in those roles. And they're not just serving like getting by. They're honor graduates. They are leaders in their formations. They're having the effect on the men in their formations that I had on that Iraqi major. So what I'm telling you is they're pulling on all the threads. The review of women in combat, the PT test, the closure of VA facilities, especially the ones that help women. And I got to tell you, there's a reason why. A quick anecdote: why we need those little side offices for women at the VAs. There needs to be special treatment for women that have had military sexual trauma, and we need our women doctors. There was a woman in France, maybe you heard this on the news. She had the hand virus. She went to her doctors. They said, "You're just stressed that you don't have it." And then she's in critical care now. She's in the ICU. She was not believed by her doctors. And that's why we need female doctors in some cases, and we need culturally competent doctors. So you can say diversity doesn't matter and that we're all just, everyone's the same, but we're not the same. We need to have a strong, capable, cohesive force. We need all of those things that are in place. And the administration has cut 40,000 roles from the VA. So that affects our doctors, our nurses, across the board, the capabilities that are available to veterans. And then, I'm not going to hit hard on the last point that hasn't been attacked, but there's been total disregard of the study and on the prevention of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and the recommendations that were made. So we got to wait maybe another 4 years, and and we'll come back to the things that were put in place long ago.
The closure of the Ranger School and then the fight to reopen. What was the greatest lesson that was learned by those who were responsible for that overturn? And how can we carry that fight forward to make sure that these hospitals don't close, that these people are not laid off, that things that affect, and it's not just females, right? When you close a hospital, you're talking about everybody, and you're talking about families of. What do you think we could do as a community to help fight that fight?
Well, I would say advocacy, which what you care about, you show up, like here, you're showing up, you're having the conversation. For Ranger School, like I said, it didn't get closed off, but I can tell you that the Army has been very successful at getting the women through, and that's because they created a community of encouragement. They have created a community and connections of people that have gone through and continue to help the others get through. And that community, I think, is what's been successful in keeping Ranger School the way it has been. And it's not just women helping other women. I heard after the first 3 went through, this is from the documentary, The Fight to Fight, but which hasn't been officially released, but I saw the sneak peek. And in this, they said that after the first 3 women graduated, there was a real drive. There was no more women were going to graduate. And then a bunch of them were getting recycled just over and over again. But in a back room, 18 young men who served with the women that were in Ranger School with them, they wrote sworn statements that these women deserved a chance to be there. And the advocacy of those men is what allowed the women to continue and get to compete and continue through Ranger School. So it's standing next to the person you know, saying what's right, going on the record, even though you might be at risk and you might not. I mean, they were at great risk. They hadn't graduated yet. They could have been said, sorry for the months that you just starved yourself and went through all that, but you're not going to get to graduate because you went against the grain. But they did go against the grain. They went and stood up against their, shoulders to shoulder with their sisters. And I would say there's also some people's opinions matter more than others. I mean, I'm just a retired lieutenant colonel, but I'm going to tell people as much as I can, as loud as I can, in every way that I can, what matters to me. And sometimes the conversations don't have to be out loud and they don't have to be public. They might be a phone call because you used to serve with so-and-so and they'll take your call. And you can bring your personal story. You can make it real. And that, I think, also changes people's minds.
So going back, thank you for that. Going back to the brief conversation we had with the Lieutenant General, where we talked about all the misinformation and just craziness going on. And the bottom line is, if you can state facts, people have to see your side. They have to see that something has gone awry. They have to see that, no, what you're hearing in the news is absolutely not true, because you are living that, right? So so you take little old me, and if you say I'm just a lieutenant colonel again, I'm just going to have to lay you out, because I am a black belt in Taekwondo, and I can, because she doesn't have her gun. But facts. How can we as a community, I am a layperson, I have no military background, but how do we elevate our voice to say, now these are the facts and this is what you need to listen to?
I think you have to focus on what you know and where you think you can help the most. Obviously, I know about women serving in the military. I'm not able to speak to every other veteran issue. I care about a lot of issues. I care about the immigrant issues. I care about so many things, but I'm focusing on the one area where I know I have expertise that I can bring. And so if there's a time where, like I said, a lot of things happen behind closed doors. There's, signatures on documents or well-written letters and phone calls. All that stuff I do think matters. I know it seems small, but that's part of what we gathered in Whiskey to do. That's part of what our distro does. We send out the notes saying, hey, you need to call your senators. And then we find a person in New Jersey or Pennsylvania that's in this person's district. And we say, hey, we're going to meet with Congressman Houlihan. and she's going to meet with you because you're in her district. And then we have that conversation. And then she has what she needs. She has a personal story to take when she interviews somebody like Secretary Hegseth for his nomination, or Senator Duckworth, or any of the people. And if they don't get it from you personally, they might get it from you from your letter. But you have to work through the channels you have. And there's a lot of organizations that you can join forces with, which also can help you get there. So you don't have to do everything. But when we went first and had a press conference in DC, we joined forces with Vote Vets. They helped us. There's just a lot of different groups out there that, one, if you don't have the time, maybe you have the funding. And if you don't have the funding, maybe you know someone. You lend your network, your time, your treasure, whatever you can. There is a way, if you want to contribute. This looks like a great place to start.
And I agree with you. And so thank you, Casey, for sharing your experience. I thank you as the audience for hearing about it and giving me the opportunity to do the little step forward that I can to correct what has gone so wrong and is continuing to go so wrong. So at this time, do we have any questions for Casey?
That means we did really well.
Good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi there, Casey. My name is Jana, and this is going to seem like a very broad and naive question, but it's what kept calling to me when you were speaking. How did you find the courage to do the things that you did? Because it sounds like you really broke through some glass ceilings in a lot of ways, and you brought hope in places where that was very difficult to do, and you, in very graceful ways, from what I can tell, advocated for women, and advocated for women through who you were, but then also through the actions you took. So where did you find that strength and courage? Where did that come from?
I would say that, one, you get thrown into situations sometimes because somebody asks you. Jackie.
Angela.
When I left the service, like I said, I didn't know anybody in New Jersey, and I met Jackie, and then she was like, "Oh, you're great. I love hearing your stories. I'm gonna throw you on this panel, this DEI panel with New Jersey Business Association." So I wasn't. 4 years ago, I'd have been like, I'm not getting up in front of a group of people I don't know and speaking about whatever. But she got me talking. So I would say, one, she gets some kudos for making me be on the speaker circuit. And
by the way, she spoke. She was on CNN. Okay, so
okay, that was another. I got thrown into things, and that was by Sue Fulton, who I named as class of 1980, and that was. You have to put yourself out there sometimes. I was scared to death. I cannot even tell you how scared I was. And I just, if you're religious, you say some prayers. If not, you have people thanking you, you rehearse. But it went right because I think it was supposed to go right, And recently, because I am from a smaller subset of West Point, as a West Point woman, there's only so many of us. I think about 5,000 now. But we just had the 50th reunion of women at West Point. And I got to tell you, every time I think that I'm part of that legacy and I talk to those women that have gone before me, I'm like, man, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to try because they did it. And when you think about the people that have done those things, you got to at least try. And sometimes it goes right, and sometimes maybe it's just okay. But you may have changed the mind of that one Iraqi army major, and maybe that's worth it.
She's just brave. Anyone else? Yes.
Anyone? I believe one of you mentioned cuts at the VA. I'm not familiar exactly. Is the VA less capable today of taking care of our veterans than they were a year or 2 or 3 ago?
Well, I'd say this is kind of one of those, I would say it's like a sneaky cut. There was actually a big paper you can find online by Senator Blumenthal, who kind of details all of the reductions. But when you cut people, and you cut the people that do the paperwork, and you cut the people that do the medicine, you are making it less capable. It's hard to see, but I mean, it is hard to get paperwork through the VA. Really, really hard. Everything's got to be perfect. So to think about the people that used to check it to try to make it go fast, them all being gone, it's the time to getting mental health care has gone from like 20 days to 60, in some places 120. Mental health care, which again, some of our administration has really spoken down to like it wasn't something that was necessary. And I got to tell you, having served with a lot of people that I love, I want them to have mental health care, and I want them to have it very fast. So that matters a lot to me. The cuts that have anything to do with women, that's what I spoke to specifically. If we're streamlining everything and just to one type of care, I think that's also making us less capable. Because sometimes women aren't believed, like the woman in France. And sometimes if a woman has been sexually traumatized, she doesn't want to interact with men when she goes into her clinic. She wants to have a back entrance. And that's some of the advancements that were made over the last 4 or 5 years and then just got cut back. So I can't spout off the whole paper, but I can tell you that this stuff is out there. And that might not be the best place to end, but I will tell one little bit of hope, because I did serve at the academy in the middle of my career at West Point, and I was just up there, and my class is starting to take over leadership roles, so I'm very excited about that. I can just tell you that no matter what the top level is doing, there's so many high-quality officers, men and women. They are rooted in the Constitution, and they are rooted in their values, and that you can put your stock in that. They are going to take care of our cadets. They're going to lead them the right way. And leadership at the top matters, but so does leadership in the middle, and so does leadership right in front of you.
Here,
so,
here.
That was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much, Casey. Thank you. Oh, you are the best. Thank you. Oops, sorry.
You don't want that. You want this?
All right. Whoops. All right. Thank you so much. Just a few closing comments, and then we can get to the book signing. First of all, just want to thank our speakers and our moderators, and also obviously for all of you all coming out tonight on a exciting Thursday here in the state of New Jersey. I was talking to Heath on his way out. He had to leave early because someone was not totally cooperating, and she wanted to go home. And that's not Cecilia, by the way. And just to remind everyone of why we're here, of Principles First, and what this is. So when I joined Principles First, and to think that we could put 50 people in a room on a Thursday night in New Jersey talking about what we talked about would have been a pipe dream. Okay? And what this was is that people connecting with people, connecting with people. And there is strength in numbers. And this means something. And the ability for us with all types of political spectrum, but one thing in common is a love for the country and the love for the ideals of the country is what brought everybody else tonight. So what's the action? The action is we're going to reach out, come join our New Jersey state chapter. We're actually meeting next Thursday. Yep, next Thursday. So I can get you an email and get you invited. We are running events all across the state. We're going to be at the Somerset 4-H fair in August. I learned something new. It's called tabling. Does anyone know what tabling is? I didn't know this was a thing. A noun has become a verb. It's an amazing culture that we live in. So anyway, we're going to be tabling. I also learned about a salon. I thought that's where you get your hair done. But apparently in New York next week, Mark talked about a salon where you're going to meet an author and talk about his book. So I've learned new things at Principles First. So that's kind of cool. But really, the action is, we're in a midterm cycle. New Jersey, I know there's some people not from New Jersey, but if you're in New Jersey and in certain districts, we have very competitive congressional races that are going to decide the future of the country. I happen to live in a district with someone who doesn't want to come out of his house anymore to face his voters. You can figure out who that is, right? We have the ability in doing this and connecting and advocating to make a difference. And I hope you will all join us in Principles First. So I'd like to thank my co-chair, Angela Smith, who I will tell right now was the most instrumental person putting this awesome event together. So Angela, please. And of course, the awesome, and I'm going to say this in front of everybody, the best state chapter in the country, the New Jersey state chapter, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and I love working with all of you. And I hope to see you at a future Principles First event. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Thanks, everyone.